You won't believe what happened to my grandmother. It all started when a group of individuals showed up at her door claiming to be from the homeowners association. But as it turns out, they weren't who they said they were at all. These imposters weren't there to help, they were there to intimidate, and what happened next is something I'll never forget. My grandmother, being the kind-hearted person she is, tried to be polite and talk things out with them. But what started as a simple misunderstanding quickly escalated into something far darker. Out of nowhere, these fake HOA officers turned aggressive. Before she knew it, they sprayed her with pepper spray right in her own home. Just imagine the shock, the fear, and the helplessness she must have felt. Now, here's the kicker. Those so-called HOA officers didn't get away with it. They're in federal custody. How did it all unfold? What led to their arrest? And what did my grandmother do to turn the tables? Stick around to find out the full story. It's one you don't want to miss. It all started when my grandmother got a strange letter in the mail. It looked official enough, with the HOA logo stamped at the top. The letter said that the community was conducting routine inspections and that all homeowners had to comply. At first, she thought it was just standard paperwork, nothing out of the ordinary. But a few days later, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, there they were, two men, dressed in dark uniforms, wearing what seemed like official badges. They introduced themselves as representatives of the Homeowners Association, but something about them just didn't sit right. They acted like they were in charge, demanding access to her property to inspect certain things. She didn't want any trouble, but as a senior living alone, she also didn't want to appear weak or uninformed. They reassured her that everything was perfectly normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why had they shown up so suddenly? Why hadn't they given any warning? Then, out of nowhere, one of them shoved something in her face. It was the pepper spray. The pain was immediate and blinding. She staggered back, gasping for breath. It was clear they had no intention of just checking her home. They were there for something far darker. But what was their real motive? And how did they get away with posing as HOA officers? The pieces of this puzzle weren't adding up, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. As the spray hit her, my grandmother's world went blurry. Her eyes burned and her throat tightened. She stumbled backward, but they didn't stop. They moved toward her, speaking in a calm, almost rehearsed tone, telling her they just needed to make sure everything was in order. But this wasn't about inspections or anything related to the HOA. There was a hidden agenda, and I had no idea what it was, yet. What bothered me most was that I couldn't understand how they had gotten the courage to do this. Who were these men, and how did they know enough about the neighborhood to pull off such a convincing scam? The HOA was a small, tight-knit community, and everyone knew who was supposed to be part of it. There were only a few members who ever made house visits, and they always sent notice in advance. My grandmother had never seen these two men before. It made me wonder if this was part of something larger. After the attack, my grandmother somehow managed to call 911, her voice shaking. By the time the police arrived, the men were gone, but the damage had been done. The authorities quickly started investigating, and that's when things took an even stranger turn. The two men's names didn't appear in any local databases. No one had ever heard of them. It was like they had vanished into thin air. I began digging. The more I learned, the more unsettling it became. These weren't just random criminals. They were part of something bigger. But what could their real motive have been? Why target my grandmother, someone so quiet and harmless? The closer I got to finding answers, the more dangerous it seemed to become. Every lead felt like a dead end, yet something kept telling me this wasn't over. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. The more I dug into these men, the deeper the mystery got. There was a trail, but it was leading me in circles. One night, I stayed up late, scrolling through old HOA records, trying to find something, anything, that would explain why my grandmother had been targeted. Then, I stumbled across a strange entry, a complaint filed years ago about a phantom HOA member who had been making unauthorized visits to homes in the neighborhood. The description of the person seemed eerily similar to one of the men who'd attacked my grandmother. My heart raced as I realized there was more to this than just a random scam. Whoever these guys were, they weren't new to the game. They had a plan, and it involved more than just intimidating residents. But what was their end goal? I felt like I was getting closer to uncovering the truth, yet the closer I came, the more dangerous it all felt. I decided to confront the HOA board, hoping they knew something that could shed light on the situation. But when I got there, the board members were acting strange, almost too quiet, too cautious. When I asked about the men who'd attacked my grandmother, they claimed to know nothing about them, yet their unease was obvious. It was clear they were hiding something. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitant, I picked up, and a voice on the other end said, "Stop digging. You're next." My blood ran cold. This was no longer just about my grandmother. It was about something much bigger, and the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. Who was behind this, and why were they trying to silence me? I couldn't back down now, but I was running out of time. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. The more I dug into these men, the deeper the mystery got. There was a trail, but it was leading me in circles. One night, I stayed up late, scrolling through old HOA records, trying to find something, anything, that would explain why my grandmother had been targeted. Then, I stumbled across a strange entry, a complaint filed years ago about a phantom HOA member who had been making unauthorized visits to homes in the neighborhood. The description of the person seemed eerily similar to one of the men who'd attacked my grandmother. My heart raced as I realized there was more to this than just a random scam. Whoever these guys were, they weren't new to the game. They had a plan, and it involved more than just intimidating residents. But what was their end goal? I felt like I was getting closer to uncovering the truth, yet the closer I came, the more dangerous it all felt. I decided to confront the HOA board, hoping they knew something that could shed light on the situation. But when I got there, the board members were acting strange, almost too quiet, too cautious. When I asked about the men who'd attacked my grandmother, they claimed to know nothing about them, yet their unease was obvious. It was clear they were hiding something. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitant, I picked up, and a voice on the other end said, "Stop digging. You're next." My blood ran cold. This was no longer just about my grandmother. It was about something much bigger, and the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. Who was behind this? And why were they trying to silence me? I couldn't back down now, but I was running out of time. The words echoed in my mind, long after the call ended, "You're next." My hand trembled as I hung up the phone. I couldn't afford to be scared, not now. But the message was clear. Someone didn't want me digging any deeper. I thought about contacting the police, but something told me this wasn't just a local issue. It felt bigger, darker, like there was a hidden web of people involved, and I was getting too close to uncovering the truth. The next morning, I decided to meet with my grandmother. She was still shaken, but I could tell she was trying to stay strong. I couldn't tell her everything. I didn't want to worry her further, but I needed her help. While I was there, she mentioned something I hadn't thought of before. She recalled seeing one of the men after the attack in a completely different neighborhood, just days before they came to her house. My stomach dropped. How could he have been there? And why hadn't she mentioned it earlier? It was then that everything clicked. These men were stalking the neighborhood. They weren't just here for one random attack. They were building up to something much worse. I immediately rushed to the neighborhood, hoping to catch someone who had seen them, anything that could explain this strange pattern. That's when I ran into someone who had been watching me the entire time. A woman, someone I hadn't noticed before, approached me in a panic. "They know you're getting too close," she said. "You have to get out of here now." I froze, confused, but before I could respond, she was gone. And just like that, the tension hit its peak. Someone had been following me, But who were they? Were they helping me, or were they part of the conspiracy? I had no choice now but to keep going, even if it meant risking everything. The pieces were falling into place, but with each new revelation, the danger only seemed to escalate. The real question was, who could I trust? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled deeper into something I couldn't fully understand. But I wasn't going to back down now. Not after everything that had happened to my grandmother, not after all the danger that seemed to be closing in. I needed answers, and I was ready to confront whoever was behind this. I went back to the neighborhood, following the faint trail of clues I'd gathered. As I walked, my thoughts kept returning to the woman who had warned me. She had been in such a hurry, so frantic. Had she been trying to help? Or had she been trying to mislead me? I needed to know who she was, and why she'd approached me. I decided to check out the abandoned house down the street that seemed to always be in the background of the strange encounters I'd witnessed. As I approached, I saw a car parked outside. It was a dark sedan, and something about it made my heart race. I crept up to the window, peering inside. That's when I saw it. The woman who had warned me was standing there, talking to someone. But it wasn't just any someone. It was one of the men who had attacked my grandmother. Before I could react, the door slammed open, and I was caught. The man looked straight at me, his eyes cold. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, stepping closer. I felt my heart pounding, and for a split second, I feared the worst. But then the woman turned to face me, her expression shifting from one of concern to something else, something darker. "You really don't understand, do you?" she said. "You're not the one they're after. You never were." My mind raced as she continued. The woman explained that the fake HOA officers weren't after me. They were after my grandmother because she was the key to something much bigger. Years ago, she had unknowingly become part of a secret real estate scheme, one that had been stealing from homeowners across the country. The HOA scam was just the tip of the iceberg, and I had been so focused on protecting her, I hadn't seen that the real enemy was far more powerful and far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. In a flash, everything clicked. The men weren't just criminals, they were part of a larger operation. They were trying to silence my grandmother because she knew too much. And now, they were willing to silence me too. Just as I thought I was done for, the police arrived, but not in the way I expected. The woman, the real mastermind behind it all, was arrested alongside the two men. Turns out, she had been playing both sides, trying to manipulate the entire situation. As the officers led them away in cuffs, I stood there, shaking but relieved. My grandmother would be safe for now. But the truth about what had been happening in that neighborhood was far from over. The real twist. The woman's last words as she was taken into custody: "You think this is the end. It's only the beginning." And just like that, the mystery was far from resolved. It seemed like the storm was only just beginning to brew.